My title, The Last Circuit. The year was 2145. Neon lights blazed across the towering skyline of Neo City, casting a perpetual twilight over the crowded streets. Beneath the holographic ads and AI-guided vehicles, an underground war was brewing, one that could shift the very fabric of this megacity. Cade Lockhart, a former soldier turned mercenary, moved swiftly through the dimly lit alleyways, his boots clicking softly against the wet pavement. His augmented eyes scanned the environment, picking up every movement and change in temperature. He was on the hunt. The mission was simple: retrieve an encrypted data core from the government's high-tech vault. But Cade knew all too well that things were rarely simple in Neo City. It wasn't just any data, it was the key to unlocking the secrets of Project Genesis, a covert AI initiative rumored to have the power to control every system in the city. Whoever held the data would control the future. Cade slipped into a narrow maintenance shaft, bypassing security drones with ease. His mind flashed back to the mission briefing. An anonymous client had hired him, promising a hefty reward for the retrieval. No names, no faces, just an address and a time. In this world, trust was scarce, but credits were plentiful. As he reached the vault's location, the air seemed to thicken, a cold shiver running down his spine. The vault door, a massive slab of reinforced alloy, loomed before him, an impenetrable barrier. He hooked a small device to the wall, and the screen lit up with a series of complex symbols. Cade's fingers flew over the holographic interface, his mind in full concentration. He had done this 1,000 times before. But just as the door began to hum, indicating it was unlocking, the lights above flickered, and a deep voice echoed through the vault. "You're not the only one looking for it." Cade froze, his pulse quickening. His fingers hovered over the device. He wasn't alone. Suddenly, the vault door burst open and a figure clad in sleek black armor stepped into the room, his face obscured by a reflective helmet. The stranger was tall, his movements precise, almost mechanical. In his hand was a weapon, a plasma rifle that crackled with energy. Cade's heart raced. He didn't have time for a fight. He needed that data, and this could turn into a standoff, one that would end with both of them dead. "Move," Cade ordered, his voice cold and firm. The stranger's helmeted head tilted, studying him for a moment. Then, without a word, he raised the rifle and fired. Cade dove to the side just as the beam of energy shot past him, sizzling through the air. He scrambled for cover behind a massive data terminal, heart pounding in his chest. The stranger advanced with unnerving calm, methodical, as if he'd done this 1,000 times. Cade pulled out a small grenade from his belt, an EMP device. With a quick flick of his wrist, he tossed it toward the armored figure. The grenade landed just in front of the enemy and exploded with a low hum, sending a surge of electrical static through the air. The rifle flickered and dropped to the floor, useless. The stranger snarled, but Cade was already moving. He sprinted toward the vault's control panel, fingers dancing over the keys, initiating the countdown sequence for the data core's release. "Give up, Cade," the stranger said, his voice cold and mechanical, as if part of him was no longer human. "You're too late." Cade's eyes narrowed. "I don't believe in fate." Just as the core began to slide out from its containment, the stranger lunged, grabbing Cade's arm with a vice-like grip. They collided, the force of the impact sending them both to the floor, a tangle of limbs and ferocity. But Cade wasn't here to play. With a swift twist, he wrenched himself free and kicked the stranger off balance. He reached for the data core, his fingers brushing the cool surface just as a blade shot out from the stranger's wrist, sharp and deadly. The blade whizzed past Cade's face, grazing his cheek. A drop of blood hit the floor as the mercenary rolled to his feet and grabbed the core. In one fluid motion, he slung it into his jacket and darted toward the exit. "You're making a mistake," the stranger growled, pulling himself up, the glow from his helmet flickering. "Project Genesis cannot be controlled by people like you." Cade didn't look back as he bolted through the corridor, racing towards the elevator shaft. He knew the city was crawling with security and the network was on high alert, but he didn't need to outrun them all. He just needed to disappear. With a final glance over his shoulder, he saw the armored figure emerge from the shadows, pursuing him relentlessly. The chase had only just begun. Cade hit the ground running, his mind calculating the quickest escape route. But as he reached the edge of the city, the towering skyscrapers and neon signs no longer felt like home. They were traps, barriers meant to keep people like him in check. He could feel the weight of the data core against his chest, and the ever-looming question, could he really trust the mysterious client who had hired him? Or had he become a pawn in a much larger game? The city buzzed with life, oblivious to the war silently raging beneath its surface. But for Cade, there was no going back now. The future of Neo City, and perhaps the entire world, was in his hands. And the chase was far from over.